There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize they have been living under a kind of spell, a trance that convinced them that life is something to be conquered rather than experienced, something to be solved rather than lived. You wake up one day and feel the exhaustion of it all, the relentless pressure to get everything right, to matter, to prove something to someone you cannot even name. And in that moment, if you are quiet enough, if you can pause the endless stream of worry and judgment that runs through your mind, you might hear a different voice, one that asks a simple question: what if you have been taking this all too seriously? What if the weight you carry is not the weight of life itself but the weight of your own resistance to it? Rudolf Steiner, the Austrian philosopher and founder of Anthroposophy, spent his life exploring the deeper mysteries of human consciousness and spiritual development, and one of his most profound warnings was about this very thing, this tendency we have to make life into something so grave, so heavy, that we forget the lightness that is also possible, the joy that exists not in spite of existence but because of it. Steiner was not a man who dismissed the struggles of life or pretended that suffering was an illusion. He understood pain, he understood difficulty, he understood the real challenges that human beings face as they move through the world. But he also understood something else, something that most people miss entirely, that the way we relate to life, the attitude we bring to our experiences, shapes those experiences more than the experiences themselves ever could. He saw that people who take life too seriously, who treat every moment as a test of their worth, who believe that their value is determined by their success or failure, are people who have lost touch with something essential, something that connects them not only to their own deeper nature but to the spiritual reality that underlies all of existence. Steiner believed that human beings are spiritual beings having a physical experience, not the other way around. This might sound abstract, even dismissive of the real struggles you face every day, but it is actually the key to understanding why taking life too seriously becomes such a trap. When you identify completely with your physical existence, with your body, your circumstances, your social position, your achievements, you place all of your sense of self on things that are temporary, fragile, and ultimately beyond your control. You become like someone trying to build a house on shifting sand, constantly anxious, constantly working to keep everything stable, constantly aware that it could all collapse at any moment. And this anxiety, this fear, this need to control and perfect and prove yourself, it becomes the lens through which you see everything. Every interaction becomes a potential threat or validation. Every choice becomes a referendum on your worth. Every mistake becomes evidence of your inadequacy. You stop living and start performing, and the performance is exhausting because it never ends, because there is no moment when you can finally relax and know that you are enough. Steiner saw this pattern in the people around him, and he saw it as a kind of spiritual illness, a disconnection from the truth of what we are. He warned that when we take ourselves too seriously, when we believe that our identity is bound up entirely in our earthly personality and achievements, we close ourselves off from the larger reality that we are part of, the reality that includes not just this one life but the entire journey of the soul through countless incarnations, through experiences we cannot even imagine, through a process of growth and transformation that does not end when the body dies. This understanding of reincarnation and karma was central to Steiner's philosophy, and it has everything to do with why he warned against taking life too seriously. If you believe that this one life is all there is, that your success or failure here determines everything, then of course you will feel the crushing weight of every decision. Of course you will be afraid to make mistakes, afraid to be yourself, afraid to let go. But if you understand, as Steiner did, that this life is one chapter in a much longer story, that the soul is learning and growing through many experiences, that what seems like failure in this moment might be exactly the lesson you need to move forward, then suddenly the stakes are different. Suddenly you can breathe. Suddenly you can see that your mistakes are not evidence of your unworthiness but part of the process, part of the way the soul learns and evolves. Steiner did not mean that you should stop caring about your life or that you should be reckless or irresponsible. He meant that you should stop confusing your temporary circumstances with your eternal nature. He meant that you should stop believing that your value as a being is determined by how well you perform in this particular role, in this particular life. You are so much more than that, and when you forget this, when you take the role so seriously that you forget the actor beneath it, you lose access to the freedom and joy that are your birthright. One of the ways this excessive seriousness shows up is in the way people relate to their own thoughts and emotions. Steiner understood that human consciousness is layered, that we have not just a physical body but also an etheric body, an astral body, and an ego or I that is the core of our individuality. The astral body is the seat of our emotions, our desires, our reactions, and it is constantly in motion, constantly responding to the world around us. When you take life too seriously, you begin to identify completely with this astral body, with the emotions and thoughts that arise in response to your circumstances. You forget that you are not your emotions, that you are the one experiencing them, the one who can observe them, the one who can choose how to respond. This is a crucial distinction, and it is one that Steiner emphasized again and again in his teachings. When you believe that your emotions are you, when you take every feeling as an absolute truth about reality, you become a prisoner of your own reactions. You become reactive rather than responsive. You lose the ability to step back, to see the bigger picture, to choose a different way of being. And this is exhausting, because emotions are fleeting, they come and go, they rise and fall, and if you are riding that wave without any stability, without any center, you will be tossed around constantly, always at the mercy of whatever happens next. Steiner taught that one of the most important practices for spiritual development is the cultivation of inner calm, of equanimity, of a steady center that can remain unmoved even in the midst of external chaos. This is not about suppressing your emotions or pretending that you do not feel what you feel. It is about learning to observe your emotions without being consumed by them, learning to feel your feelings without believing that they define you. And this practice, this cultivation of inner stillness, is directly related to the problem of taking life too seriously. When you are calm inside, when you have a sense of your own deeper nature that is not dependent on external circumstances, you can engage with life fully without being crushed by it. You can care about things without making them into matters of life and death. You can try and fail and try again without feeling like each failure is a judgment on your soul. You can laugh at yourself, you can be playful, you can take risks, because you know that who you are is not at stake in any of this. You are already whole, you are already enough, and the game of life is not about proving that but about expressing it, exploring it, discovering more of what it means to be a conscious being in a physical world. Another aspect of Steiner's warning about taking life too seriously has to do with the way we relate to other people. When you are trapped in the seriousness of your own story, when you are constantly worried about how you are being perceived, whether you are measuring up, whether you are good enough, you lose the ability to truly see other people. They become mirrors for your own insecurity, judges in the courtroom of your mind, sources of validation or rejection. You stop relating to them as whole beings with their own struggles and journeys and start relating to them as characters in your drama, as people who are either helping you or hurting you, either proving that you are worthy or confirming your worst fears about yourself. This is a lonely way to live, and it is also a way that perpetuates suffering, because as long as you are locked in this self-centered seriousness, you cannot truly connect with anyone. You cannot be vulnerable, you cannot be authentic, you cannot let yourself be seen, because being seen feels too risky, too dangerous, too much like exposing the part of yourself that you are not sure is lovable. Steiner understood that true spiritual development involves moving beyond this isolated sense of self, moving into a consciousness that recognizes the interconnectedness of all beings, that sees the divine spark in everyone, that understands that we are all part of the same unfolding story. And when you begin to see other people this way, when you begin to recognize that they are struggling with the same fears and doubts and insecurities that you are, when you begin to understand that we are all just souls trying to find our way, then suddenly the whole game changes. Suddenly you can be kind, you can be forgiving, you can be patient, not because you are forcing yourself to be good but because you genuinely see that there is nothing to prove, nothing to defend, nothing to protect. We are all in this together, and the seriousness that keeps us separate is just another illusion, another way we have forgotten who we really are. Steiner also spoke about the importance of humor, of the ability to laugh, of the capacity to see the absurdity in our own struggles. He did not mean that life is a joke or that suffering is not real. He meant that when we can step back far enough to see the patterns we are caught in, the stories we tell ourselves, the roles we are playing, there is often something almost comical about it, something that reveals how much we have been taking ourselves too seriously. Think about the last time you were completely consumed by a problem, convinced that it was the end of the world, only to look back a week or a month or a year later and realize that it was not nearly as important as you thought it was. Think about the times you have been so worried about what someone else thought of you, so convinced that their opinion mattered more than anything, only to realize later that they were probably not thinking about you at all, that they were lost in their own worries and insecurities. This is the perspective that comes with a little distance, a little time, a little willingness to see that the drama we create in our minds is often far more intense than the reality we are actually living. And if you can bring that perspective into the present moment, if you can see the drama as it is happening rather than waiting until later to laugh about it, you free yourself from so much unnecessary suffering. You free yourself to be present, to be curious, to be open, to engage with life as an adventure rather than a test. One of the most powerful teachings Steiner offered was about the path of knowledge, the way that human beings can develop higher faculties of perception and understanding that go beyond the ordinary senses. He described a process of inner training, of meditation and self-observation and moral development, that gradually opens up the spiritual worlds to direct experience. But he was also very clear that this path is not for people who are looking for escape, who are trying to avoid the challenges of physical existence, who want to transcend the world because they cannot deal with it. He said that true spiritual development requires that you be fully present in the world, that you engage with the difficulties and joys of human life, that you learn the lessons that are here for you to learn. And this means that you cannot take life so seriously that you are paralyzed by fear, but you also cannot dismiss life as meaningless or unimportant. You have to find the balance, the middle way, the place where you can be deeply engaged without being attached, where you can care deeply without being controlled by your caring, where you can work hard and strive and grow without believing that your worth depends on the outcome. This is a delicate balance, and it is one that most people struggle with their entire lives, swinging back and forth between taking things too seriously and not caring enough, between being crushed by responsibility and running away from it. But the balance is possible, and it is the place where real freedom lives, where real joy lives, where real spiritual growth happens. Steiner believed that the purpose of human life is not to achieve some external goal, not to become rich or famous or successful in the conventional sense, but to develop the capacities of the soul, to become more conscious, more loving, more free. He believed that every experience we have, every challenge we face, every relationship we enter, is an opportunity for this development, a chance to learn something about ourselves and about the nature of reality. And when you see life this way, when you understand that the point is not to get it right but to grow through the process of trying, then the pressure lifts. Then you can make mistakes and learn from them. Then you can fail and get back up. Then you can be yourself, with all your flaws and imperfections, because you know that you are a work in progress, that you are allowed to be imperfect, that imperfection is not a problem to be solved but a condition to be embraced. This does not mean you stop trying to improve, stop working on yourself, stop striving to be better. It means you do all of that from a place of love rather than fear, from a place of curiosity rather than judgment, from a place of trust rather than anxiety. And that shift, that movement from fear to love, from judgment to curiosity, from anxiety to trust, is everything. It is the difference between a life that feels like a burden and a life that feels like a gift. If this resonates with you, if you are beginning to see that maybe you have been carrying a weight that was never yours to carry, if you are starting to understand that taking life too seriously is not wisdom but a kind of prison, then I want to invite you to stay connected with this channel. We are building a community here of people who are on a similar path, people who are waking up to the deeper truths of existence, people who are learning to live with more freedom and joy and presence. If you found value in this video, go ahead and give it a like. That simple action helps this message reach more people who need to hear it, more souls who are ready to let go of the heaviness and step into something lighter, something truer. And if you want to continue this journey with us, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss any of the insights and teachings we share. You are not alone in this. There are so many of us who are walking this path, who are learning to see life differently, who are remembering that we are more than our struggles, more than our fears, more than the roles we play. You belong here, and your presence matters. Now, coming back to Steiner's warning, there is another layer to this that is worth exploring, and it has to do with the way seriousness affects your energy, your vitality, your life force. Steiner described the etheric body as the body of life, the energetic template that sustains your physical form and animates your being. When you are taking life too seriously, when you are constantly stressed and anxious and worried, you are draining your etheric body, depleting your life force, exhausting the very energy that keeps you alive and healthy. This is why chronic stress leads to illness, why people who are always tense and worried tend to age faster, why the inability to relax and let go manifests as physical problems. Your body is not separate from your consciousness, and the way you think and feel directly impacts your health and vitality. Steiner taught that one of the best things you can do for your etheric body is to cultivate joy, to find moments of lightness and play, to allow yourself to laugh and be spontaneous and let go of control. This is not frivolous, it is not a luxury, it is essential for your well-being. When you laugh, when you play, when you allow yourself to be silly or carefree, you are literally nourishing your life force, replenishing the energy that stress and seriousness have drained away. And this has a ripple effect, because when your etheric body is strong and healthy, you have more energy to engage with life, more capacity to handle challenges, more resilience in the face of difficulty. Steiner also warned about the dangers of materialism, the belief that the physical world is all there is, that consciousness is just a byproduct of the brain, that there is no deeper meaning or purpose to existence. He saw this worldview as one of the greatest sources of suffering in modern life, because when you believe that this is all there is, that you are just a body that will die and cease to exist, then of course you will take everything too seriously. Of course you will feel the desperate need to make this life count, to achieve something, to leave a mark, to matter before it is all over. But Steiner offered a different vision, a vision rooted in his direct spiritual perception and his study of esoteric traditions. He said that the physical world is just one layer of a much vaster reality, that consciousness is fundamental and eternal, that you are a being who has lived many lives and will live many more, that death is not an ending but a transition, a doorway into another phase of existence. And when you begin to open to this understanding, when you allow yourself to consider that maybe there is more to reality than what you can see and touch, then the grip of seriousness begins to loosen. Then you can hold your life a little more lightly, not because it does not matter but because you know that it is part of something much bigger, something that you cannot fail at, something that is unfolding exactly as it should. This brings us to one of the most challenging aspects of Steiner's teaching, which is the idea that you chose this life, that before you were born, your soul looked at the lessons it needed to learn, the karma it needed to work through, the experiences it needed to have, and it chose the circumstances of this incarnation. This might be hard to accept, especially if your life has been difficult, if you have suffered trauma or loss or hardship. The idea that you chose this might feel offensive, like it is blaming you for your own suffering. But Steiner did not mean it that way. He did not mean that you consciously chose every detail, every painful moment. He meant that your soul, in its wisdom, knew what it needed for its growth, and it chose circumstances that would provide those opportunities. And the reason this is important is because it gives you back your power. If you see yourself as a victim of random circumstances, as someone to whom life is happening, then you are powerless, you are at the mercy of forces beyond your control, and of course you will take everything seriously because everything feels like a threat. But if you see yourself as a soul who chose this life, who is here to learn and grow and evolve, then you are not a victim, you are a participant, you are an active agent in your own story. And this changes everything. It means that even the hard things, even the painful things, are not punishments or mistakes but part of the curriculum, part of what you came here to experience. It means you can stop asking why this is happening to you and start asking what you can learn from it, how you can grow through it, who you can become because of it. Steiner taught specific practices for developing this kind of awareness, for cultivating the inner strength and clarity that allows you to hold life lightly even as you engage with it fully. One of the most important practices is meditation, not as a way to escape the world but as a way to develop a deeper relationship with your own consciousness. He described a form of meditation that involves focused concentration, where you hold a simple object or idea in your mind and observe it with complete attention, without allowing your thoughts to wander. This practice strengthens the will, the ability to direct your own consciousness rather than being carried along by the stream of random thoughts and reactions. And when you develop this capacity, when you can choose where to place your attention, you are no longer at the mercy of every worry or fear that arises. You can observe the worry, you can feel the fear, and you can choose not to identify with it, not to let it define your experience. This is freedom, and it is freedom that comes not from changing your circumstances but from changing your relationship to them. Another practice Steiner emphasized is what he called the review of the day, where before you go to sleep, you mentally replay the events of the day in reverse order, observing yourself as if you were watching a character in a story. You notice where you reacted unconsciously, where you were caught in patterns, where you could have chosen differently. But you do this without judgment, without beating yourself up, without making it into another opportunity to take yourself too seriously. You do it with curiosity, with the genuine desire to understand yourself better, to see your patterns more clearly, to learn from your experiences. And over time, this practice develops a kind of witness consciousness, an ability to observe yourself even in the midst of experience, to have a little bit of distance, a little bit of perspective, a little bit of space between the experience and your reaction to it. And that space is where freedom lives. That space is where you can choose to respond differently, to be different, to live differently. Steiner also spoke about the importance of rhythm and routine in supporting spiritual development. He noticed that people who live chaotic, disorganized lives, who are constantly reactive and scattered, have a much harder time developing inner peace and clarity. He taught that creating regular practices, regular rhythms in your life, helps to stabilize the etheric body and creates a foundation for deeper work. This does not mean you have to be rigid or controlling, but it does mean that having some structure, some predictability, some intentional practices that you return to day after day, helps to create a container in which transformation can happen. This might be a morning meditation practice, or a regular time for reflection, or a weekly ritual that reminds you of your deeper intentions. Whatever it is, the point is to create anchors, touchstones, moments in your day when you reconnect with what matters, when you remember who you are beneath the roles and responsibilities, when you step out of the seriousness and into the stillness. One of the most beautiful aspects of Steiner's philosophy is his understanding of love, not as a personal emotion but as a spiritual force, a creative power that underlies all of existence. He taught that the evolution of human consciousness is an evolution toward greater love, greater capacity to recognize the divine in all beings, greater ability to act from compassion rather than self-interest. And when you begin to cultivate this kind of love, when you begin to see every person you encounter as a soul on a journey, when you begin to respond to difficulty with understanding rather than judgment, you naturally stop taking life so seriously. Not because you stop caring, but because you start caring in a different way, a way that is rooted in trust rather than fear, in connection rather than separation, in acceptance rather than resistance. This is the love that Steiner pointed toward, and it is the antidote to the heaviness that so many people carry. It is the way out of the prison of seriousness and into the freedom of presence. So what does all of this mean for you, for your life, for the way you move through your days? It means that you are allowed to lighten up. It means that the weight you are carrying, the pressure you are feeling, the constant worry that you are not doing it right, that you are not enough, that you are going to fail, all of that is a story you are telling yourself, a story that has become so familiar that you have forgotten it is just a story. It means that you can choose a different story, a story where you are already enough, where your worth is not in question, where mistakes are part of the process rather than evidence of failure. It means that you can laugh at yourself, that you can play, that you can take risks and be creative and try new things without the crushing fear of judgment. It means that you can be present with what is, with the life that is actually here in front of you, rather than constantly comparing it to some imagined ideal or worrying about some imagined future. It means that you can breathe, that you can relax, that you can trust that you are exactly where you need to be, learning exactly what you need to learn, becoming exactly who you are meant to become. And none of this means you stop caring or stop trying or stop growing. It means you do all of that from a place of joy rather than fear, from a place of curiosity rather than desperation, from a place of trust rather than doubt. This is what Steiner was pointing toward when he warned against taking life too seriously. This is the freedom he knew was possible, and it is possible for you too, right now, in this moment, if you are willing to let go of the story that says it has to be so hard, so heavy, so serious. You are a spiritual being having a human experience, and the experience is meant to be lived, not endured. You are meant to be here, fully present, fully alive, fully yourself. And when you remember that, when you really let that truth sink in, everything changes.